I didn't even read the chat, man. I was looking at something else. My friend is in the middle of playing the Great Ace Attorney 2. He just finished case 2, so we were just talking a little bit about that in between the break.
I have considered the defense's counsel's request for a further summation examination of the jury. And I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure.
Yay, more water. Don't drown me.
So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman.
We are, my lord.
Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime.
Judicial findings. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his.
If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider.
Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? There was a fire!
Dearie me, it was only a little book, hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit.
Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble.
Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes.
Gave you the sneezes?
Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems. With one notable exception, of course.
My learned student friend was unable to find a fault in the previous witness testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime.
Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusions is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way.
That means, I'm afraid, that during the summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts.
But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those 2 details are all you need provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted.
And there I was, thinking this might be hard. But Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it. Otherwise this really will be where the trial ends.
Ugh, no pressure then.
That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, counsel.
Oh, yes, my lord. All right, Ryunosuke. Focus your mind now. Double slap. Whew. Clearly, the key to this summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid. Or should I say, Mrs. Garrett.
We have a book that disappeared from the Garrett's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found in the victim's hand.
There must be a way to link the 2. Yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far. Whatever it takes.
Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Garrett and how she reacts, even to the things other people say.
All right, time to press everything again.
Hold it!
But as we now know, there were 4 books, not 3. Well, what difference does it make? There's every possibility that the 4th book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord. Yes, that's the part I have a problem with. Sorry? Well, at the point the woman was stabbed, this landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Enjoying a fairy scrap with his wife or something, you said. That's not exactly how I put it, no. Well, anyway, the point is the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened.
I think that's what you call a strong alibi.
So it couldn't have been the landlord who did it, which only leaves the Nipponese fellow. Honestly, I can't see what all this palaver is about. It's a done deal, isn't it? I suppose it is, since I've nothing witty left to say. No, Naruto!
Hold it!
So, you might be willing to change your decision, you mean?
Oh my, such delight on your face. But I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I am a very modern, metropolitan, and rational woman.
Anyone who claims that are definitely not. That's great.
If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place? You see, modern, metropolitan, and rational thinking, wouldn't you say?
And not at all extreme.
As I see it, an overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese man has been implicated by overwhelmingly strong testimony. So, despite one or two minor puzzlements, I do declare that the man is overwhelmingly guilty. Modern, metropolitan, and rational logic, wouldn't you say?
Overwhelmingly.
But us modern gals are always delighted to embrace new fads, you know? So, I'd be only too happy to consider an exciting new theory if you could come up with one.
I'd be happy to do that too, if only I could.
Let's do our very best not to disappoint the modern and metropolitan young lady.
Right. I'm glad you admitted rational there.
Hold it!
But what about the possibility that the window was open? What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been. How can you be so sure? The prosecutor fellow over there said it earlier, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. You don't want to invite that sort of cold indoors. So no, that window wasn't open. Us Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, see? There was definitely a fire. But you couldn't categorically state that the window wasn't open, could you? It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it. Then what's the point in even having windows, huh?
Naruhodo, counsel, you will kindly refrain from childish bickering.
Oh, sorry. Somehow I need to show there's an undeniable possibility that the window was open. Because this young man isn't going to budge otherwise.
Hold it!
But the little book was on fire at the time, was it not?
With flames of love, I'll have you know.
There's really no such thing as a loving incinerate bomb.
Well, he brought it upon himself. It's playing with fire to betray a fiery love, isn't it? Well, don't you agree?
Oh, well, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding, Mrs. Garridev.
Never you mind that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute. Nothing more.
Jovial little dispute, huh?
And I won't have any more of these suggestions that it was anything whatsoever to do with this crime.
Right. Well, we'll see about that. But what about juror number 5? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Mrs. Garridov's relentless onslaughts.
It's almost as though he's used to it. What a gentle soul he is.
Gentle? Okay.
Hold it!
You just want to get this over with. How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here. Well, him and me both then, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some riddies with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know? She can be fierce, believe me. Believe you me. Another shining example of marital bliss, then. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, do you know... It's funny, but I can't quite remember. Sorry? It was too frightening. That's the thing. I must have blocked it out. Helpful.
I wonder if Mr. B will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf.
Don't even go there, Mrs. Sato. Why would you suggest this? There must be some way to jog his memory about this.
Hold it!
Does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case?
Sorry, what was that? You'll have to speak up, lad.
Could you tell us more about that fire?
It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday.
Oh, this is the cursed cake!
It had 75 candles on the top, it did. What a sight to behold it was.
You put candles on a cake? What? Was it some kind of devil worship? Yay.
Of course not. It was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, obviously.
It seems that a common custom here in Great Britain. It seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruhodo.
Anyway, I mustered all my puff to blow them out. Only to have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out, but the candles went flying all over the room. The furniture caught, and everything went up, and the whole place filled with smoke.
Definitely sounds like devil worship to me. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold. But how did you catch a cold from a fire?
What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, oh bless them, threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it.
The windows.
The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave, it did. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in the hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in a hurry.
I knew it was devil worship all along. But something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsume, could have attacked the young woman on the street, as well as how he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Yes. I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between our assertions. Just a connection might do the trick. Happy birthday, Lucifer! Alright, I'll see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike. There's like one at least. That's the spirit. We can talk about the window.
Objection!
These two juror statements clearly contradict one another.
They do? How exactly, counsel?
Don't point at me again. I told you it wasn't me.
What's that you say? Speak up, lad, speak up.
Juror number 3. Do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebration last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. What do you think this was? I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from fire, then you'd be mad not to open the... Oh! I don't think those candles can all fit on the cake. Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garrett household. And Mr. Garrett had the following to say about that. The whole place filled with smoke.
Oh my.
On my hat! Oh, my hat, hello!
Excuse me.
Oh my goodness, we're pursuing on the jurors during the summation. I forgot that was a thing. Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that? Mrs. Garrett.
Oh, dearie me. What is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am?
I didn't say that, but okay. It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now.
What is it?
When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window?
What? I beg your pardon? What are you insinuating?
The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window.
And what if we did?
all right then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window, which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering.
Even though your house was on fire?
Oh, you'll never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise.
Of course. I should have realized.
That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have that added to Mrs. Garrett's formal statement. Now you mention it, yes, the window was open at the time. I clean forgotten, but it's true.
Hold it!
I'm pressing, I guess. The fourth book found at the scene of the crime shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garrett had told us he had been reading.
Well, I really couldn't say.
On the day in question, did you or did you not throw out your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading?
I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. And now you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right.
Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset?
Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on, as well you know.
I really don't.
I barely noticed I was throwing a book.
Oh boy.
Much less the title of it.
Hello, sir?
Excuse me.
What is it, juror number 5? You know something? I've remembered what it was. That memory I blocked out. I was listening to what this granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back.
Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? I'm Mrs. Garrett, or the maid, I'll have you know.
Oh, now she's just deciding between the two. The man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time. It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, like. I put my hand in my pocket for the wages I just earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out. Oh dear, what a disaster. You haven't heard the half of it, boy. Oh? The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight, I've lost the day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear, stuck into the wall next to me it did, about an inch deep. Ooh. No words, just terror. I could smell it then, you know, that god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in the muddy banks that night, I could tell you. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it? I'll never use the word lightly again. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rage, use their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchet, hammers, you name it.
Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined.
You do have the Susato takedown, and you've tossed Naruhodo about, what, 3 times?
No, I wasn't thinking that. Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized.
Versus throwing people?
At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like.
What? Attack? Who are you going to attack?
Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think.
Alright, we'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later, if I dare. Do we ever come back to this? I don't think so. A woman in rage will hurl almost anything at you. The kitchen knife really brought that home to me.
Hold it!
Your wife really threw a kitchen knife at you? That's right. She was chopping meat with it. Had a tidy edge on it, believe me. Still, it's all memories, isn't it? It started with that smile she threw at me when we were courting. And since then, the list of things she's thrown at me has grown along with our relationship. That was a cup. There was a cup, then a glass, then a pot, a kettle, a A chair, a wardrobe, a cooker, a bathtub? Your wife must be even beefier than you. And things came to a head last week when she threw me right into the Thames. Still, she's not so bad when she's calmed down. She's a little sweetheart, really. I'm so happy for you. If you want to know what I think this whole idea of ladies first that we're so obsessed with in this country was thought up by some clever lads who've been tossed in the Thames too many times by their wives. That's a very interesting theory.
What a terrible thought.
On the face of it, this juror's statement just sounds like a really extreme antidote. But I think it might turn out to be an extremely powerful weapon. A weapon I might be able to use to make the jurors accept an alternative explanation here. Yeah, I got this! I got this! Okay, old man, you're good. Alright, hello, let me pit you and you! And I will drink while they yell at each other, I guess. Those two statements clearly have a deep, significant connection.
Good grief, you mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once.
Juror number 2, do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative?
Oh my, whatever do you mean?
An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back. What are you talking about? We've demonstrated that the 4th book, The Lion's Pride that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garrett's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Garrett's household to the street below. Eh? What's that now? After all, Mrs. Garrett could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4?
What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole?
Beanpole? I'm beginning to think that, ever since the true origin of this book came to light, perhaps she had a feeling this might be what happened. Now you listen here, you Eastern Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house, but what? What was it? A knife? I'm really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Garrett household to the scene of the crime was...
Take that!
Juror number 4, Mrs. Garrett.
What now?
I must apologize in advance for this. But I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before?
Good lord, counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's the victim's back, man.
My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Garrett was hurling anything she could at her husband, who'd been backed up against the window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at the crime scene. You can't seriously believe that. The book was found in the victim's grass. Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand? Huh? Even my missus hasn't got an aim like that. Yes, I admit, there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now.
Oh my.
Mrs. Garrett, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? I'm assuming yes, she fainted. Ma'am. My lord.
I wish to change my decision. I'm a woodman with my word, after all.
Thank you, madam. Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions. Mr. Foreman? I'd have to agree. Not that I think the granny didn't mind.
Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either.
All together now, ladies and gents. Except for Grandpa.
We did it. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo.
So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors called guilty against 4 now calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided. And this trial will continue.
You know what? The Gramps probably wasn't even paying attention. Let's be real. Rebel, rebel, rebel.
Now then, Lord Van Zeeks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed?
By pouring wine and probably smashing it in his hands. This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Oh, he's drinking it. He drank from there 4 times now. Like a cork wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save the gutter. If I may, Lord Van Zeeks, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened. Credible? Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond. But let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourself better with the relative position of those places being discussed. What do you mean by that? What's this angle this time? It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Garrett household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance from the Garrett's house to the scene is some, 15 yards.
Let me see. 15 yards. That's around 14 meters.
14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I imagined. And as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, wantonly hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think. You know, as much as Baroque is being a jerk, it is a valid, ish contradiction here. And Naruhodo has to point out what the issue is here. Naruhodo has to, explain it. Even those pathetic, serialized detective stories have more believable plots. Ah! There's nothing I can say to that.
That prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice.
He does. Miss Susato.
Serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he?
Maybe let's pick our battles here?
My lord, might I be allowed to speak?
As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense, yes. Go ahead. The prosecution may
That's not the judge.
The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, Juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Garrett, must be called to testify and submit to cross-examination.
Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror? Rubble, 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 rubble. Order! 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 Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
Objection!
And there goes the wine bottle. And unnecessary. Yes, it's necessary. Shut up!
Lord Van Zeeks?
There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume they would be able to testify accordingly.
What say you, witness? Sis? Yes, sir. Constable Rowley Beat reporting for duty, sir.
Well, good morning, officer.
Sorry for dozing until now, sir. I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir. Oh, they are so heroic, these London bobbies. Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more. Oh, Rowley, my hero, you make me swoon.
Oh boy.
Very well. I hereby reject the defense's request
Oof.
Oh,
and order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwhile before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation of events.
yes, sir.
Oh, all right, one more time. Constable Beats report.
This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garrett. Believe me, a London bobby is good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Garrett's house are top-hinged casements. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out the window, we would have seen it. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty Rowley was there to make sure nothing was disturbed. I didn't take my eyes off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on the front, sir.
Weren't you like lying face flat into the snow?
Well, this is quite startling. Top-hinged casement windows.
That detail was not in the police report, Constable.
Yes, sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy.
You cannot excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable.
No, sir.
Sorry, but what exactly is a top-hinged casement window? Oh boy. And you. You cannot excuse your ignorance with such trite remarks, my learned friend. Of course, sorry.
I found it, Mr. Naruhodo. Cast your mind back to the windows in Mr. Garrett's home.
Or room. All right, I'll try.
So the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the house. But as it's a top-hinged casement window, it swings open along the upper edge, you see?
I'm glad you've rectified your ignorance. A casement window, most prominent feature. Is its stay. A metal bar which prevents the window from being open beyond a certain amount.
It prevents its opening?
This is all news to me.
Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife were to have been thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the pane and fallen straight down to the pavement below.
No. You see the problem, then? Good, your education in windows is complete. Baroque! There was never any possibility of either the book or the knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered, Something we've discounted already. That can't be!
Do you see that, Rolly? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony. Yeah, yes, my darling, I saw it. I saw how he crumbled before me. Oh, Rolly, you're so strong.
Help! How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and already my argument's been destroyed.
Counsel, if you could drag yourself upright again, the court awaits your cross-examination.
Oh, alright. My lord. Oh, good. Another desperate situation. Man, get used to it, Naruto. You have the blood of Phoenix Wright living inside you, and you're just put in a corner all the time. That's just how it's gonna be.
Hold it!
How can you say that for certain?
A very good question, sir. And the answer is this. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder of all of us policemen of our sworn duty. He showed us that before, didn't he?
Did he? I can't say I remember.
To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man. It's what the job's all about. And that is why I stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you of Bobby's good first word. While rubbing my tired eyes immediately, sir. Oh, Rolly, you're so manly. Of course I am, my darling Patricia. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly.
Send help. No, none of this is what I meant. I meant, how can you say for certain that this case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garrett?
Oh, I see, sir. You should have said so earlier, sir.
Yes, well, so could you answer the question? That was a waste of time then.
Absolutely, sir. I will answer it to the fullest of my ability, sir. There's a surprising reason why Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's domestic dispute can't be related to this case.
But before I get to that, sir, just one thing.
Yes?
I'd very much like you and all your countrymen to understand the great British institution of Scotland Yard. So I hope you'll take back some tales of us London bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles.
I wasn't planning on going back just yet. I only just arrived here.
So to that end, sir, I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your perusal.
But I must warn you, you won't be able to get through it without shedding a few tears.
Thank you. I'll try. Thanks for the warrant card? The small folding wallet that identifies London bobbies and contains the rules of conduct to which they must adhere. Oh, okay. Thanks, I guess. I'm gonna look at that, I guess. Examine. Policemen will strive to preserve the peace within his allotted beat. A patrolling officer is expected to walk 20 miles to beat every day for the furtherance of community relations. Any crimes fall under jurisdiction of the beat in which they discover. When a crime is discovered on his beat, the policeman must assist the initial investigation and help detectives. Whew, okay.
Hold it!
By which you mean they don't open fully, is that correct?
Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, you see? So they're restricted as to how much they open.
And therefore anything thrown out of the window from the inside room would simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. Well, thanks, Baroque. Here is a location where the object would have fallen.
Yes. Directly opposite the scene of the crime, on the other side of the rather wide road.
Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top hinge casement thing before? Well, I have another question for you, Constable.
And what would that be, sir?
How do you even know? Why would you have any idea what sort of windows Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's house is furnished with?
Ah, well, sir, that's very simple. You see, I helped with the investigation yesterday.
I will press her in a moment. You helped? In what way? Various members of the public were questioned in order to gather information about the case.
That's right, sir. The sad truth is, we're all overworked. So even though it wasn't under the jurisdiction of my own beat, I obviously wanted to help.
I see. Well, thank you.
Oh, it is my turn? Is it my turn now?
Yes, unfortunately.
Hold it!
But according to my notes here, the sun had gone down already and it was dark.
Oh, but Rolly and I were strolling along gazing at the night sky and looking for our lucky star.
Isn't it foggy? Sorry?
The star that will guide us to eternal happiness.
Can it guide you to answer the questions? If a flaming book had cut across the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star.
And if I'd seen a shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. Let Rolly be an expector, I would have said, 3 times at least.
Of course, what with the smog and everything, we couldn't actually see any stars. In short, are you trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky before you?
Yes, sir, that is correct, sir. As sure as the night sky in London is starless, sir.
It certainly seems like they're telling the truth.
And then we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, so we ran straight over to help her.
Hold it!
Yes, you said that you went to a nearby police box to fetch another officer, is that right?
That's right, yes. If I had been on Rolly's beat, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course.
Don't feel bad, my love. You can't be expected to know the location of every police box on every beat.
So Rolly told me the way, only I sort of got a little lost on the way.
Oh, Patricia, my darling. That's why I love you. Your terrible sense of direction is bewitching to me. Oh, Pat.
Oh, Rolly.
It's so weird with their names switched. Oh, please. So,
I suppose I was gone for about 15 minutes. But like I said, my Rolly was at the scene the whole time, making sure nothing was disturbed.
I was off duty at the time, of course, but a true Bobby is never really off duty, sir.
Hold it!
Nothing to report.
That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time. Never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. I swear to that on the yard's honor, sir.
Really? That seems a little strange.
Beg your pardon, sir? Strange, sir? Seems altogether regular to me.
This burnt copy of The Lion's Pride was originally in the Garrett household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as you were at the scene of the crime the entire time?
Aha! Could it be a different copy, sir? One that just happened to be burnt as well?
That's too coincidental. Nope. Even if they were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book like that in her hand? As we can see from this photograph print, she had a bag over her shoulder.
Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hand from the moment we arrived at the scene.
Is that so? There's something about this statement that's not sitting right with me. The two mysteries of how that knife ended up in her back and how the book ended up in her hand. There must be some common thread between them. I'm so sorry, Mr. Naruhodo. I had no right to speak out. What? What do you mean? I requested the cross-examine of Mrs. Garrett without consulting you, even if the judge did deny me. Oh, I see. Well, I agree with you. We do need testimony from Mrs. Garrett if we ever going to get to the truth of this matter.
Do you really think so?
I mean, they did keep it. They just swapped their names. Well, think about it. No matter how far it is across the road or how that window opens, like, they just changed Rolla to Rolly because it's now the frickin' police officer. Mr. Garrett's book found its way to the scene of the crime somehow, didn't it?
You're right.
And then there was Mrs. Garrett's reaction to me showing her the knife. The woman's hiding something. I'm sure of it.
You're right again.
We need to use this cross-examination to uncover more clues. We've got to get to the bottom of this one way or another. I swear. We'll get to the bottom.
Yes.
Hold it! Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, Mrs. Beat?
Oh, sorry.
You look, well, delighted. Is there some particular reason for that?
Oh, I was just remembering, that's all. We really were so lucky.
Lucky? What do you mean?
Well, of course I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't misunderstand me, please. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Rolly's beat. It was so close, you see.
Oh, I hadn't realized.
Oh yes, that street, Briar Road. That's the boundary between Rolly's beat and the next one. Isn't that right, my love?
Constable Beat.
Yes, that's right. That's the reason I was helping out with interviewing the occupants of the Garabet household yesterday. Their house is on my beat, you see, sir.
Hi, I've been hydrated. That really was cutting it close then.
Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something. If the Garrett household is on your beat, does that mean that the pavement next to it is as well? Outside Mr. Garrett's house? Well, yes, ma'am. The pavement on that side of the road is part of my beat.
I see. I was unaware of that.
Just think, if that woman had been attacked just on the other side of Briar Road, we would never have been able to go for that meal to celebrate our wedding anniversary. But that's the life of the Bobby, after all. Extraordinary people, our Bobbies, tirelessly working for the benefit of all Londoners. Do you know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Rolly for all his hard work. Don't you think so, my darling? That must be it, Pat, my love. That must be it.
I think perhaps we should make sure we have that information officially on record.
Leave it to me, Mr. Naruhodo. I'll take care of it immediately.
Okay.
Now it's my turn, I think. Can I ask you something, please, Mr. Lawyer, sir?
Oh, yes, of course. What is it?
You're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell.
Huh? I wasn't really, what's she doing?
Please, just because I'm a woman, it doesn't make my testimony any less valuable.
I never said that.
You might just see me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word, I am.
I really don't remember ever suggesting that I doubted you.
No excuses. I don't want to hear it. My voice will be heard. My lord, you'll let me speak, won't you? Yes, Mrs. Beat. I will allow you to supplement your testimony if you so desire. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the sage one.
That was a very loud mutter.
I heard that! That Japanese man thinks the police's wife's word counts for nothing, does he?
I never said that!
Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Rolly won't.
Duly noted, Mrs. Beat. Please, I humbly ask you to continue. What could she possibly be about to say, I wonder?
I know what I saw. My eyes never let me down. My sense of direction is a little off sometimes, though.
Hold it!
Excuse me?
Mrs. B, nobody is questioning what you've told us.
I saw it, I did, that evening. That evening I saw it clearly. That little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back, slinking away from the scene. And I know that I know what I didn't see as well. I didn't see any flaming books or knives flying through the sky.
All very clear. You also mentioned something about having a poor sense of direction.
Oh, yes, well, that's a little embarrassing, really. I always end up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Rolly. He gets ever so crossed.
Oh dear. Oh, well, we've all made mistakes like that from time to time, I'm sure.
I got the wrong church on the day of our wedding. I remember. It caused a terrible kerfuffle. I very nearly got married to someone I never even met before.
That would most certainly not do, madam. Anyway, continue with your testimony, please, Constable.
Yes, sir. No, we're not talking to you. No! Fuck! I went the wrong way.
Hold it! Excuse me.
Constable Beat, is there a problem?
Huh? No, sir. No problem, sir.
Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps?
Oh, well, in a way, sir. Yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened that evening is all.
You mean Mrs. Beat lost her way on the night of the incident?
Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box in the next beat over from mine, but she was gone a fair bit longer than what I was expecting. I thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, but my darling was gone a good 15. Oh, Rolly, you're such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly.
The bouquet? Sorry, what bouquet are you talking about?
Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Rolly's so romantic. He saved up for it with farthings and halfpennies he found in the gutter while doing his rounds.
And are you okay, Rolly? Yes, how romantic.
I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling? Oh! Huh? Oh, yes. But that was just between us.
Oh? No talking about it to anyone else, darling. You have to promise.
Really? Oh.
Too late! What was that all about? Constable Beat looks very obviously troubled during that exchange.
I'm afraid I can't offer any useful insight, Mr. Naruhodo. But I'm quite sure of one thing. We have to ask Mrs. B about the bouquet.
Mrs. B, the bouquet you just mentioned. I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony, please.
Oh, really? Oh, yes, I'd love to.
Van Zeke! This whole time I forgot Van Zeke was over there. He's just probably like, what the hell?
What happened was, I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while.
Hold it!
You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime?
Yes, that's right. Oh, I was so upset. When we ran over and saw it was a woman with a knife in her back, I was so shocked. I dropped the bouquet Rolly gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice at first.
And then you went to the police box to report it to the policeman whose beat it was on.
Yes, and I came back to the scene together with the other constable, you see? That's when I spotted my bouquet again. But the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, was nowhere near the victim's body at all.
In case you need reminding, Mrs. Beat, the victim is not deceased.
I was all flustered for a moment before I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road.
Your husband, presumably.
That's right. Silly me. I'd gone over to the wrong side of the street. Although, I'm going to blame the bouquet this time. I can't think how I got there. I really can't.
So the bouquet somehow moved from one side of the Briar Road to the opposite. Was it the bouquet that moved?
Curious indeed.
Isn't it? But the worst of it is, I'd forgotten to pick the bouquet up again when we left the scene. That beautiful rose Rolly brought me. Would that change from the gutter he spent so long collecting?
By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry, solitary rose?
Oh! Yes, that's it! That's the bouquet Rolly bought me for my anniversary, with all bits of change he found in the gutter.
Maybe just call it a rose.
Tell us, Lord Vanseeks, where did you come by the flower?
According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene investigation, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Garrodip household. You know what? I think at this point Baroque has come to the realization what happened. With all those scenes where he's ellipsing, I think he's just processing what had occurred. In front of the Garrodip's house? Although it wasn't noticed until the morning as it laid where the street lamps cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare.
Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Could I have it back now, please?
No, I think for good measure this rose should be added to the court record as evidence.
Oh.
Anniversary bouquet. A present for Patricia Beat from her husband, Rolly. The shock of seeing the stab victim caused Mrs. Beat to drop the rose where she stood.
But it's a symbol of her love. I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back.
Good grief! Rest assured that I shall do my very best not to forget, Mrs. Beat.
I'm pretty sure I'm presenting the flower to this statement, but I want to look at it. An English rose. It's such a beautiful flower. This is a rose, is it? I've never seen one before. Do you not take an interest in flowers, Mr. Naruhodo? I wouldn't say that exactly, but I do know 3 types at least. Gosh, 3? Yes, plum blossoms, peach blossoms, and cherry blossoms. Just like Phoenix Wright. Perhaps you should consider branching out? Learn some that aren't fruit tree based, for example? It's very stylish paper the flower's wrapped in, isn't it? It's just an old newspaper, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, I suppose it's because I'm not used to seeing English print. It looks so exotic to me. Ah, I see. Is something wrong? Oh, no, I was just thinking that if you wrapped a stone-baked sweet potato in English newspaper, it might look like some sort of fancy cake. Susato-san, you do love your cakes. Okay, Susato likes cakes.
Objection!
You claim, Constable Beat, there was nothing to report in the 15 or so minutes you were guarding the scene. But that cannot be.
What? What do you mean to say?
In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the police assigned to the beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road to where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of the meager bouquet, if a single sorry bloom can be so described, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs.
Meager?
Objection!
But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to the fact?
No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It has nothing to do with the case. That's why Rolly didn't mention it, I'm sure.
No, because sadly, it's not only your bouquet we're talking about here. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way around. What are you talking about? Think about it. Besides Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Garrett's book. Mr. Garrett's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out the window by his wife, would have struck the pane of the casement window and landed here on the west side of the street. And yet, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime on the east side of the street. But in fact, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in front of Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's house. There's no logical explanation for those things, unless somebody deliberately moved them.
What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Rolly's done something wrong. Don't you listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says. Wittering on about books and bouquets. Why should we care? It's nitpicking, that's what it is.
Oh good, Mrs. Garrett's come around. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Garrett, but deliberately meddling with the scene of the crime is a criminal offense. It's called, tampering, Mr. Naruhodo. But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it, for a very subtle but compelling reason.
Objection!
Tampering. You've barely heard the term before. Tell us, my learned friend, who would possibly have had cause to carry out such an elaborate deception? Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All the evidence and all the testimony points to that one particular person.
Counsel, I must demand that you substantiate this conjecture. Who are you saying is responsible for tampering with the scene of the crime?
Rolly.
Take that!
Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Rolly Beat! It was you!
What? A policeman? A member of Scotland Yard?
What nonsense! Why would you say my Rolly do something like that? There's no one straighter than my husband! No Bobby works more tirelessly for the people of London!
Mrs. Beat, you said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty. The 15 minutes that you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it.
You're making it up! It's all nonsense! It's all lies! What about that Japanese man with the whiskers? I bet it was him! He did it!
If that were true, Constable Beat would have seen him do it.
Oh!
And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, it was after the defendant had fled the scene.
Well...
Objection!
First you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusations lacks one very important thing. You claim the crime scene was tampered with, but there is only one reason anyone would commit such a reckless crime: to hide something.
That's right, he's right! But my husband and I just happened to be there, that's all! So why would we have anything to hide? It doesn't make sense!
You offer no motive for this alleged tampering, and until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. Do I present the rose or do I present the police information? Constable Beat had a very good reason for wanting to tamper with the scene of the crime. That's the key to this entire affair.
Mr. Naruhodo, have you managed to solve the mystery?
Counsel, you've made a very serious accusation against a London police officer. If you are mistaken, I'm sure I need not point out that your reputation as a lawyer will be irrevocably damaged. With that stark warning in mind, you will now explain to the court the motive for this alleged tampering.
Yes, my lord. The flower or the book? Constable Beat's motive for tampering with the crime scene was to hide where the victim fell. Where the victim fell to the ground. That is what this Bobby had to cover up at all costs. What?
Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked? What are you talking about? We told you at the very start, didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road. We saw it happen, remember? It's right here. As if anyone didn't already know.
That's certainly what everybody has been led to believe. But in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all.
What? What?
Grumble, 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 grumble.
I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end, Counsel.
If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my Nipponese friend. Where are you proposing that the crime actually took place that evening? Over here, sir.
Take that!
But that's...
On the opposite side of the road.
I don't understand.
On the evening in question, Mr. Garrett's book fell directly down from the open window above, and your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, never moved at all. What did move was the scene of the crime itself.
Good gracious! Rebel, 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 rebel.
Objection!
Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. But these witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place.
That's right. I saw it with my own eyes.
It was 5 o'clock in the evening and already dark. There was the typical London fog on the ground. When you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid, that was actually on the west side of Briar Road.
No, that's not true. It can't have been.
Constable Beat then arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help. Also, I love Naruto's confident pose. It's so good. And during the 15 minutes you were away, he transplanted the crime scene. He moved all the things shown in this print. The victim herself, the 4 books. He moved everything, in fact, to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road.
Extraordinary.
But the constable overlooked one thing.
What? What did he overlook?
The bouquet, I presume. Exactly. The prosecution told the court just a few minutes ago about the discovery of the rose bouquet. Lord Van Zeek said it wasn't noticed until the morning as it laid where the street lamps cast no light.
Yes, it couldn't be seen in the dark, obviously.
Which is why it was only the bouquet that was found in its original position, on the pavement on the west side of Briar Road. And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond, Constable Royley Beat?
Well, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to nod off again, but I haven't slept properly in a month.
Oh my god, let this man sleep.
Did I miss anything important? Oh, Rolly. It isn't true, is it? What that lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is because you're the most upstanding, righteous man I know. I had a dream. A terrible dream. All the things I did that night. Everything come out, everything exposed. Only it seems... it wasn't a dream at all.
Good golly! Bum, bum, bum. Order, order, order! What on earth is the meaning of all this?
Oh, Rolly, why? Why would you do something like this? Moving a corpse is a criminal offense, isn't it?
Wishing the victim dead should be one too.
Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respectable member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the good people of London town.
I can't say, sir.
What?
I really am ever so sorry about all this. For damaging the Yard's reputation. Or everything.
I have a possible explanation for why, on that particular evening, Constable Beat felt compelled to move the scene of the crime. I can think of one reason. What? How could you possibly know? You, a foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman. It's pretty straightforward, Baroque.
And yet, Lord Van Zeeks, it is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth of the matter thus far. I believe it would be beneficial to the court to hear this extraordinary young lawyer's theory. Counsel for the defense, if you please.
Yes, my lord.
Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence.
At once, my lord. England, Japan. It makes no difference where you come from. Human emotions are the same. And I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's actions.
What gives away the motive for Constable Beat's unthinkable actions?
Take that!
I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I have only just arrived from Japan, which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learned that, though honorable, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world, for example.
Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat in all kinds of ways. There's no doubt that the young Bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day, certainly.
But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special.
Special? How?
On account of this bouquet, my lord.
Oh, yes! It was our very first wedding anniversary.
Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford that simple gift for his wife, and was so looking forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal. When he and Mrs. Beat stumbled upon a crime along Briar Road. When he saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapse on the pavement ahead of them, what must have gone through the man's mind?
But sir, just on that one particular day, I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beat puts up with a lot of being married to a bobby like me. I wanted to show my dear wife how much I care.
This is the warrant card that Constable Beat offered to lend me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives.
Aha!
Constable Beat. Is that, or is that not the reason why you moved the whole scene of the crime that day?
Yes. Everything you said, it's all right.
So that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat.
Oh!
Exactly. To summarize, the incident, it actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat.
Good gracious! Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you have done?
It was the first time since I became a copper that I'd ever cursed God. Stay close to me, Pat. The criminal could still be lurking somewhere. As we ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. We've got to report this to the station as quickly as possible. But then it dawned on me. I realized where we were, where the victim was lying, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Why here? Why did this have to happen here? And why tonight of all nights? Why? It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime, so I told Pat she'd have to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. It was then, when I opened my mouth to speak, it just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the next beat to mine, Pat. So you'll have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Nystrom Street and then...
Whew. You know, we still have to talk to the Gyarados after this? Oh, Rolly!
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, Constable. I just wanted... just that one night to take my Patricia out for dinner. Oh, Rolly. Just that one night.
You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening of celebration would be ruined. And so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction, just across the street, to the east pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care.
You see, I thought... Well, I was sure the victim was dead, you see.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, of course he did. Otherwise, my Roy would never have left that poor woman on the freezing cold pavement.
Oh my god, this poor woman!
Ah, I see your meaning now.
But God got me back for my sins, didn't he? That's why I missed the rose I bought for Pat. Oh no, Rolly, that was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in the dark place. I'm so sorry, Rolly.
Oh, okay. And you can tell us, Constable. How many books did you move from the one side of the road to the other in total?
Huh? Oh, 4 it was. Yes, sir. Definitely 4. 3 of them dropped by Mr. Natsume, and the 4th being the one that fell from the window upstairs in the Gyarados household, of course.
But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? When all the others were scattered haphazardly around, I mean.
Oh, well, sir, that's because that's how I found it.
How you found it? What do you mean?
When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand.
You sure it was this book, The Lion's Pride, that the victim was holding?
Oh, yes, sir. No doubt about it, sir.
Interesting. The book entitled Lion's Pride that was in the victim's hand when Mrs. Beat first ran over to see what had happened.
I thought it was an open and shut case at the time. You see, there were only the 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw it happened. However, which way you look at it, it had to be the fellow who ran off who done it, I thought. I couldn't see the harm, really. I didn't think moving it all over the road would have made a jot of difference. I suppose this is it for me now. I've had it. Ugh.
My lord.
Yes, Lord Van Zieks?
I believe That concludes the cross-examination of the witnesses. Constable, you may withdraw.
Yes, sir. Mr. Prosecutor, sir, what will become of my Rolly? What will happen to him?
For now, you are free to go home. The police will contact you in due course.
Please, don't punish my husband. This was all my fault. It's because I'm always moaning at him for coming home late.
Leave it now, Pat. Let's go home. I'm tired.
All right then, my love.
One last thing, Constable.
Huh, sir?
Let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem to you.
Yes, sir.
Carve that lesson in your mind. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of the crime.
Huh? Never again, sir. You mean to say...
Leave, now. This trial is not over yet.
Sir!
Aw, Baroque cares.
Well, quite a startling revelation, I must say. Whoever thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of the crime like that?
Indeed, my lord. Nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here. Principally, that the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsumi, is the only person who could have possibly committed this crime. We're still on this! No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else, another person who could be responsible for the knife in the victim's back.
Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I believe the prosecution is probably well aware of this possibility already.
Lord Van Zeeks, is this true?
Just admit it, man! The foreigners got it! Very well. Name the person, if you will, and if further investigation is warranted. The prosecution has no objection to the trial continuing.
You will name this other person who could have perpetrated the crime.
Take that!
The defense would once again like to request the cross-examination of a new witness, my lord.
Once again?
My assistant made the same request earlier. In order to finally reveal the truth about his case. Yeah, he's keeping his job. Like, it's the same thing in the Japanese version. Like, it's more straightforward in the Japanese dialogue, but yeah, his job is fine. It's imperative that we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Garrett.
Me? Oh, dearie me.
Objection!
That request has already been denied.
Objection!
But the situation is very different now. Mrs. Garrett, answer me this.
What do you want now, you little toad?
At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Garrett. In the course of the argument, a minor house fire was ignited. And to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened a window that looked out over Briar Road.
Well, what of it?
You threw this book at your husband when he was cornered from his back against the window. Upon striking the pane of the open top hinge casement window, the book plummeted directly down, finding its way to what we now know to be the true scene of the incident.
Yes, and as I said, what of it?
During the argument, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. So, let me ask you one more time, Mrs. Garrett. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back, have you really never laid eyes on it before?
Huh? I don't recall it.
Seriously?
Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw at my husband? And anyway, the man over there in all that regalia said members of the jury needn't testify, didn't he?
Conveniently, yes.
Objection!
And now he's like, you know what? Let's do it. No, I have no recollection of saying that at all. Juror number 4.
Oh!
Make no mistake. You jurors are not special in any way. You are not immune to the judicial process. If you know something about this knife, madam, let the truth come out.
But that's just a common or garden knife. It could have come from anywhere. Oh, we have several like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know?
What's that? Are you joking?
What are you saying, please, Mrs. Garrett?
Rubble, 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 rubble.
Now you listen to me. I refuse to believe all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought that I injured someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it.
Oh, the poor woman.
So, yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence if you're going to insist on this being my fault. You're going to have to prove to me that I threw that knife if that's what you think. Come along now. Chop chop. Do your worst.
Well, Mr. Naruhodo? If I had evidence like that, believe me, I would have thrown it at her already. Then take the stand, juror.
Oh!
The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this woman. Thank you, Lord Van Zeeks. Oh! He thanked him despite all the shit being thrown at him.
I'm going to have to testify.
Juror number 4. And as I'm sure you will appreciate, having observed it with your own eyes today, witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being unearthed. Truths of which the witnesses themselves may not even have been aware.
Naruto's just so polite. Like, yeah, Baroque is just like, okay, fine, I'm going along with you now. But, like, I think, which is great, I appreciate a prosecutor is just like, okay, you know what? I'm actually here for the truth, and I'm tired. But also, man, Naruto is so polite.
Oh, dearie me.
So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony, Mrs. Garrett. And mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Do you concur, counsels?
Certainly, my lord. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for, my lord. He just seems so much more polite in the localized version. This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. Well, to be fair, I'm here, in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer. Aww! Screenshot. Witness, state your name and occupation.
Oh, yes, my name is Joan Garridev. And I'm a juror and such like.
It sounds like even she doesn't know if she's a housewife or a maid or what anymore.
The court has decided your testimony is required in order to clarify matters in this case. Do you understand, madam?
Oh, yes, my lord.
You will tell the court everything that took place in your household on the evening in question. And I warn you, do not attempt to hide the truth.
Oh, dearie me.
Chin up, Jody. Nothing to worry about now. Oh, this is the case of the couples.
Oh, I didn't know you were here, John.
Wasn't only you in the room that day, old thing, was it? Rather think I ought to testify as well, don't you?
But what about your knee, dear?
Oh, don't you worry about that. Hardly noticed it. I'm not the sort of chap to leave a comrade to face disciplinary action alone.
Oh, Joan.
I presume you are Mr. John Garrett.
Yes, sir. Former second lieutenant of the 3rd Regiment of the 4th Northumberland Philisters, sir. That's so much to read. Seen my fair share of action and now living the quiet life, as it were. The quiet life. Were you not engaged in an incendiary battle with your spouse on the day in question? Well, yes, quite.
I believe this may represent a first in the proud history of the British court. Calling a juror to the witness stand is unprecedented. However, the court will hear your testimony now, juror number 4, and that of your husband. You will recount clearly and concisely the events in your home at the time of the incident in question.
Sir, at once. The final stretch, the Battle of Garrett. Yes, on the day you're referring to, the wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now. Knocked a candlestick over and set fire to the carpet. Soon had it out, though, and got the window open.
Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him.
Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I noticed if 1 or 2 went missing, I'm afraid. And that bally thing in the victim's back really was one of ours. If you'll have a job proving it, I think.
It sounds as though it was quite the battlefield in your household that evening.
Although an entirely one-sided assault, it seems. The enemy caught us on the hop, sir. Had no choice but to dig in and take defensive measures. To be honest, if the enemy had kept shelling us for another minute, we'd have been toast. Of course, a veteran such as myself is only too aware that on every battlefield, you're just a gnat's whisker from death at any moment. Are we still talking about a marital quarrel here?
Well, I must say I'm dubious that this testimony will shed any light on the origin of this jackknife.
In combat, one's focus narrows such that surroundings are barely noticed. These witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than have testified already. This may be a dead end. Van Zieks may well be right.
Well, whatever the chances, we only have this last cross-examination to uncover the truth, Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Very well, counsel. Begin your cross-examination.
Yeah, don't worry about it in another trial. Don't worry about it. The Garretts in HD.
Hold it!
The reason is what you told us yesterday, I believe.
Yes, that's right. If I remember correctly.
Do we really need to bring it up?
It all started because of a note that was tucked into the pages of a book belonging to Mr. Garrett.
A rather passionate note, in fact. But Mrs. Garrett found the note, discovering her husband's little secret.
And she gave him a mighty number of slaps across the face for it, too.
What a sordid state of affairs.
Hell on earth. Poor Garrett! I say, when a chap says he can't recall such things, it's common decency not to drag it all up. And besides, half of it was wide of a mark anyway.
A likely story.
These waters run very deep.
And what transpired next after these multiple blows to the face?
Hold it!
And the fire also spread to some items of furniture, didn't it? The bookcase, my armchair, anything of mine, really. It just so happens there was some bath water around that evening, so I sloshed that about to put it out.
A most precarious situation you put yourself in.
Ours is a 3-story townhouse on the west side of the street, where the water main isn't connected yet. Have to draw water from a public water pump during the day if you need any, you see.
The lodgers are always moaning that they can't get any water at night. Although, that little mustached Japanese man buys water in bottles, I believe.
The defendant, Mr. Natsume, you mean?
Yes, he receives a stipend for his studies, you know, from his home country. Can you imagine being able to brew a pot of tea at all hours? He's obviously very well off.
Have you actually seen the state of the man?
I believe he uses all of his income to buy books.
Well, anyway, the point is, I was able to douse the fire with the water, fortunately enough.
Hold it!
Even though the room was on fire?
As far as I am concerned, at the time, it was more important to extinguish my anger than the flames. When a woman wants to throw, she must throw.
That is most certainly not true of a Susato takedown, Mr. Naruhodo. How did she know I was thinking that? So, please cast your mind back and try to remember. Was a knife among the items that you threw at your husband that day?
In all honesty, I don't recall, but I feel I must point out that I'm no monster. Let me see. Some bread, a cabbage, garlic, a towel, and a
By Jupiter!
By Jupiter! Is that what he said?
a sponge, a napkin.
These are all soft items.
It was really only soft items I was throwing,
That's a fat lie.
and I was really most restrained. The majority of them barely hit John. He is my husband, after all.
I see, Mrs. Garrett. Your thoughtfulness and consideration for your spouse is apparent.
What about you, Mr. Garrett? Do you remember what your wife threw at you? Well, I recall The Lion's Pride, of course. Jolly good book. Only just purchased it, too. And a jolly good book for burning, it seems. But it was a dash awful scene on the battlefield, I can tell you. Flames everywhere, smoke billowing, couldn't see a bally thing, really. I dare say I wouldn't even have noticed a knife bouncing off the old bounce. I don't think they tend to bounce, actually.
Hold it!
Sorry? Would you care to elaborate? Nothing to say, really. Rather partial to a spot of carving, you see. Pipes and whatnot. Fishing tackle. You know, the sort of thing.
It's a passion we both share. I like to carve little wooden trinkets, too. And then there's my leatherwork.
Sorry to say we're always losing knives about the place. We have dozens of things.
They sell them at the market sometimes. 20 for the price of 19. Needless to say, I snap them up. Oh, John prefers to use 2 knives at meals times 2 instead of a knife and fork.
I'm learning new things. I never pressed them on these other dialogues, so I'm learning new things. No, John, we don't want people to think I'm some savage! Here we go again, with the scaldings. Why are they being so evasive?
I imagine it's because they don't want to believe it. They can't bear the thought that it might have been one of their knives that injured the victim.
Which is entirely understandable, of course, but still. Go on with your testimony, witnesses. Sir!
Hold it!
So you have no intention of admitting it was your knife, unless we can produce proof? Even though there is no other credible possibility if Mr. Natsumi is innocent?
Objection!
You forget, my Nipponese friend, that it has yet to be established that the accused is not responsible for the attack. As if I could forget. If only there was some way to know who had handled the knife. But I suppose wizardry like this is just a dream.
Perhaps you're thinking of fingerprinting, Mr. Naruhodo.
What? You mean it's not a dream? That sort of wizardry really exists? I mean, several years from now.
Whenever people touch anything, they leave behind a unique pattern from their skin, or so they say.
But I can't see anything. Fingerprints! There are already countries in the world where these so-called fingerprints can be used as evidence. Lord Strongheart is currently discussing the matter at the Ministry of Justice. Ah, the early signs of fingerprint evidence.
Yes, I believe we are rapidly approaching an era of scientific methods of investigation.
Emma would be so proud.
But for now, we shall have to find an alternative method of proving our assertion.
God, I realized this entire time. I'm realizing it now. We're not doing, like, your typical stuff that we need to do to prove stuff. Because we're missing, like, ballistic... Do we have ballistic markings? They don't exist. Fingerprints don't exist yet.
That this knife found in the victim's back was originally in Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's house.
Ugh, if only I could transplant this whole incident to several years in the future. Man, Phoenix Wright would save your butt right now, wouldn't he? Okay, that was some good dialogue. That's the extent of the testimony, isn't it? Is it?
What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo?
Well, I think we've heard all this before, to be honest. I can't say I'm particularly confident that we'll be able to prove anything new from this testimony.
But in this cross-examination is absolutely essential. That we establish how this knife came to be at the scene of the incident.
Yes, I know.
I'm sure both of them must be feeling very worried. Worried that it was in fact a knife belonging to one of them that caused the victim's injury. If we could find even a tiny shred of evidence to support that theory,
it would clinch this trial for us. That would it would explain everything.
Yes, it would.
So for Soseki-san's sake, we must find that last crucial piece of evidence.
Hold it! By Jupiter! Excuse me.
Sir? Do you have something to add, sir? Mr. Garrett, don't shoot! Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon? Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind? Nothing of any significance, no. Just that the barrage of projectiles the old thing launched in my direction was somewhere more solid than she implies. Books, bricks, and the fire poker, I seem to recall. Ouch. And the woman's aim is uncanny. She let a direct hit with every ball! Good grief, woman! We're not at home now. This is a court of law.
Oh, dearie me. Ever so sorry, dear.
What's she even doing with a teapot in here?
Honestly, John, I would never have thrown such things at you, obviously.
Well, take a look at this then. How do you suppose that happened,
Your pipe, sir.
Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean down with one of her soft projectiles she did, yes. And when I went to pick the thing up, it was broken in two. I like to see a sponge do that sort of damage. I see, your pipe was broken. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Anyway, I've managed to bandage the thing up for now.
Ah, you're one to exaggerate, aren't you, dear?
Huh. I wonder what we should make of this account. It could be important. Bring it in, please. The defense gives Mr. Garrett's remark just now to be of great significance.
Objection!
Not now, Baroque! This war veteran's words only tell us one thing. Betray a fiery wife and pipes, as well as hearts, may be broken. Sentimental wisdom, perhaps, but hardly worthy of adding to a formal testimony.
Indeed. Common sense, one might say.
Might one?
In that case, would you at least permit us to examine the pipe, sir?
Huh? Well, I don't see why not.
Oh, dearie me. There you go again, trying to ingratiate yourself with the young lady.
Wow.
Very well. The court would accept the gentleman's pipe as evidence.
Mr. Garrett's pipe. Apparently it fell to the floor during the domestic dispute he had with his wife and broke.
I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Mr. Naruhodo. I was just feeling rather disappointed for you that your request was turned down.
Oh no, it's fine. Thanks to Sato-san. We have some new evidence to work with. We should examine it carefully. Let's do it. It looks to be in a sorry state with that bandage around it, doesn't it? But for some reason, it feels slightly ominous to me. Like it's trying to shout out a warning. Probably because it's the same blue as Mr. Garrett's dressing gown.
I suppose it must have considerable sentimental value to Mr. Garrett, given that he's gone to the trouble of repairing it like this.
Either that, or he can't afford to replace it. Alright, let's grab this little thing! Oh, something just twinkled inside the chamber of the pipe here.
Yes, I saw it. Something's stuck in here, I think.
Let's turn it over and give it a shake. What's this?
A tiny fragment of metal.
It looks like the tip of a blade or something. The tip of a blade? Surely it couldn't be. I just said one of Susato's lines is not a holder. No big deal. Fragment of metal. The small piece of metal looks like it might be the tip of a knife blade. It was stuck inside the bowl of Mr. Garrett's pipe. Well, now he can smoke out of it properly, I guess.
Well, thank you for that rebuttal, Mr. Garrett. Now if we could return to the crux of the matter. What can you tell the court about the knife using to attack the victim?
Oh, whoops. Ugh. Yeah, I'm kind of shocked that it's been 2 days and he didn't notice that there was something lodged in his pipe. Oh, I can examine this. I can examine this. I want to examine it. I want to see what it says. This is the tiny piece of metal we found in the chamber of Mr. Garrett's pipe.
It looks like the tip of a blade.
Oh, is it the same thing?
Is something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo?
I don't really know. There's just something niggling me, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is.
Perhaps in that case, it would be wise to examine some of the other pieces of evidence again.
No, we don't. I just need to present this because I'm... Here we go. Mr. Garrett, could I ask you to take a good look at this piece? Look at this, please. You can ask, but I can't see a bally thing. You can't? Used to call me Dead-Eye Deb back in the regiment, of course. But that was some time ago now. Even when I'm trying to enjoy a large print book by the fire these days. I struggle to tell a B from a D and a P from a Q, to be honest. Okay, you know what? Now I can understand why he never spotted it.
Oh, he does. Dearie me, it's rather wearing being asked about every other letter and every other word.
You must be the very dussy. What? Wait, what? I can't read that. How do I read that? You must be very duzzy. You must be very doozy. Oh, you must be very busy is what he's trying to do, but he changed it to you must be very dizzy. Okay. What is that? A tiny scrap of metal? Yes, almost certainly from the tip of a blade. And what may appear at first to be just a tiny scrap is in fact a crucial piece of evidence. Interesting. And where did the defense come by this evidence? It was lodged in the chamber of Mr. Garrett's pipe. By pipe, you say? By Jove, I wonder how that got there.
And what precisely does this fragment of metal signify, Counsel? Are you suggesting that it is in some way related to the matter of the stabbing on Briar Road?
Yes, actually. I am. What? When put together with another piece of evidence already in the court record, I believe this tiny fragment of metal will unravel the whole truth of this case, my lord. Rumble, 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 rumble.
You appear rather confident in that extraordinary statement, Counsel. Very well, then. Present the pertaining evidence to the court.
I'll present in a moment. I'm just gonna stand up and stretch because I've been sitting for quite a bit. Oh, we're almost there. The home stretch. God, this is so long.
What evidence, when paired with this fragment of metal, allegedly reveals the truth of the entire case?
A knife!
Take that!
This is a knife that was found in the victim's back. And if you look closely, you'll see that there is a small piece of the tip of the blade that is missing. A common issue with the inferior blades sold at unsavory street markets. Criminals who use them regularly leave the tips lodged in their victims' bones.
And what of this particular knife?
No doubt its tip has suffered a similar fate, now languishing somewhere near the spine of the victim. Actually, Baroque, you have really short-term memory. No, that's not the case. The tip of this particular knife's blade is the very fragment of metal we discovered in the chamber of Mr. Gyarados' pipe.
Oh!
Ah, there's the damage!
Good grief, Lord Van Zeeks!
I don't believe it. The knife from the crime scene and this fragment of metal are a perfect match.
Good golly gosh!
I love the shoutings this judge makes, man.
Order! Is this some sort of Eastern sorcery?
No, it is not. This is no magic, my lord. This is a miracle.
A miracle?
So Van Zeeks has figured it out, has he?
Counsel, explain this extraordinary coincidence at once.
Yes, my lord. A crucial point we have asked ourselves here is, when did the fragment of metal find its way inside Mr. Gyarados' pipe? Give me 1 second. Just putting my headset down. Oh, my ears are hurting. Is when the fragment of the metal finds its way inside Mr. Gyarados' pipe. Something that was clarified for us in the most recent witness testimony. Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it cleaned out with one of her soft projectiles, she did. Yes. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Oh no, she's shivering. Oh, dearie me. During the argument between these two that occurred just as the victim was on the pavement below, Mrs. Gyarados flung this knife at her husband. However, the knife missed Mr. Gyarados, instead striking the pipe in his hand at the time, which caused the tip to break off, of course.
Good lord!
Yes, and that is when the tiny tip of the blade found its way inside Mr. Gyarados' pipe. The chances of that are 1,000,000 to 1! And yet, there's no other credible explanation for how the tip of the blade ended up in your pipe. Then, after losing its tip, the knife ricocheted off the pipe and flew out of the open window. In short, this knife, which fell from the window of the Gyarados' house, is the very same knife that struck the victim in the middle of the back on the street below.
Oh gosh, oh dear, oh no!
Objection!
He only took 2 sips of his wine in this whole case, though. Okay, never mind, 3. 3 sips. Altogether, 5 sips now. A full body theory. I'll give you that. A complex bouquet of seemingly trivial points, plausibly arranged to create an almost passable vintage. Allow me to toast my learned friend's characteristic Nipponese approach to bottling his argument. Sorry? But after all, it's just a theory. The bottle, I fear, is corked. Because you see... The leg! It's spoiled by an insurmountable inconsistencies. An insurmountable what?
Lord Van Zeeks, explain yourself. What is this inconsistency you claim to have identified?
An inconsistency of the simplest nature, my lord. The victim was found with the knife planted in the middle of her back. Yes, in her... Oh!
That's right, you silly little man.
Now, Joan, old thing, why are you getting so excited about? Let us consider the basic facts of the case once more. The victim was walking along the pavement before being stabbed in the back and falling to the ground. If the knife that struck her had fallen from above, there's no possible way it could have planted itself into the victim's back. Gah! Mr. Garrett has some issues with his certain outfit in the back.
Order! Order!
Quite right, you see? That's exactly right. If the knife had fallen on her from above, it would have struck her on the top of her head.
Well, there's a very straightforward explanation for this. He's lost for words. Look.
I knew it. I never liked his theory in the first place.
I don't know, though. What really did happen?
It would appear the defense has made a rather spectacular blunder.
No, I didn't. I just let me present stuff. If a theory has even one inconsistency, it cannot stand. Your theory, my learned friend, is history. We were so close. I could see the truth. I was so sure we were on the right track. But now the way has been blocked completely by just one simple inconsistency.
Or in other words, we simply need to eliminate that one inconsistency and the theory will stand.
Mr. Sato.
You mustn't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. You were just caught off guard, that's all, and your mind went blank. But if the path you are on is indeed correct, then a way will present itself. The key to this is in the court record, I'm sure, and all the information you need is there.
It seems you have nothing to say, my Nipponese friend. Well, your silence speaks volumes. A tacit acceptance that your theory is fatally flawed.
Objection!
Nope, I'm not done. He's screaming objection while his head's down. Naruhodo! This inconsistency doesn't mean I was on the wrong track. It means that I need to sharpen my mind and dig deeper for the truth. You go, son! It's a test. Come on, boy! Yes! If the knife fell on the victim from above, there's no way it could have hit her in the middle of her back. Under normal circumstances, that is. Come on! Come on! You got that confidence going. What are you implying?
Counsel?
There is a piece of evidence in the court record that can explain this inconsistency. That can explain how the knife that fell from above could have pierced the victim's back. We already have the answer.
Goodness!
Utter madness.
Surely this must be the last time. Counsel, present the evidence of which you speak.
This is the last inconsistency. The final piece in the puzzle. I actually needed to breathe, so thanks, Naruhodo. I needed a deep breath. If I can successfully make sense of this, the truth will be laid bare at last. The evidence that explains how the falling knife became lodged in the victim's back is this.
Take that!
This, the fourth book found at the scene. This is the final piece of evidence the defense will present. The burnt book.
Is that not Mr. Garrett's book?
Time for pursuits, yo! Yes, and to understand its significance, we have to consider how it came to be at the scene in the first place. You know, if you all tell me to get up and stretch, I can't proceed with this finale that's getting epic. This photographic print clearly shows the book in question, and the victim holding it in her hand. But as we all know, it was the police constable that put the book between her fingers like that.
Quite so, as part of her wholesale transplanting of the crime scene to the opposite side of the road.
That's true. However, as part of his testimony, Constable Beat made an extremely enlightening statement on that point. But what made you place the book in the victim's hand?
Oh, well, sir, that's because that's how I found it. When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand.
In other words, the victim had already picked the book up of her own volition. And clearly, that must have been before she suffered the knife wound.
Well, should say so. After being attacked with a knife, I don't imagine she had been doing much of anything.
So the question becomes, why did the victim have that book in her hand? By jingle! I think I'm beginning to see what may have happened now.
Oh, dearie me.
Have you too, Van Zeeks? We know the book fell from the top floor of the Garrett household onto the pavement below. At precisely the moment that victim was walking past. Yes, at exactly that moment, the young woman was walking along the street in the light fog, when all of a sudden, a book fell right in front of her.
The book I threw.
Yes, Mrs. Garrettov. And what do you think the woman did? What would you do if you were walking along and suddenly a book landed in front of you on the pavement?
Well, I really can't imagine it, but I suppose she might have reached down and picked the book up.
Yes, that is exactly what the woman in fact did. She picked up the book.
Oh heavens!
And when the woman reached down to pick the fallen book up, what position would her back have been in? That's right, facing the sky, completely and utterly defenseless. Then, in the very next moment, while the woman was still bent over picking up the book, the next object fell from the room above, the jackknife, straight into the middle of her back. And at that same time, walking by chance directly behind Miss Green, was the defendant, Mr. Soseki Natsume.
Well, I never!
It appeared to Mr. Natsume that the woman simply collapsed on the floor, in the dark and the fog. He didn't see the knife falling on her from above.
Oh!
And from the other direction, the constable and his wife saw no one but the victim and her apparent attacker.
So there never was a real culprit to run from the scene in the first place.
No, this was nothing more than a series of unlikely events that culminated in an unfortunate accident. Way to go, Naruhodo. And that is the real truth behind this case. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Garrettov?
The very first time you showed me that knife, I had my suspicions. I wonder if perhaps it might have been something like that.
There, old bean.
Poor Mrs. Garrettov.
Oh, the sun has wilted.
Of course, I never meant for anything of the sort to happen, but it was all my fault, wasn't it? I take full responsibility. I let my anger get the better of me. I threw that book. and I threw the knife as well. Joan, dear.
It's all right. I know.
I'm ever so sorry. Truly. I'm sorry! Oh.
Oh dear.
Lord Van Zeeks, what news of Mrs. Garrideb?
She's been taken to the infirmary. It would appear that today's events have left her in an especially flustered state. However, I believe she will recover in due course. There is no cause for concern.
Yes, unbeknownst to themselves, they caused what could have easily have been a terrible tragedy. They shall have to prepare themselves for the consequences of their actions.
There is some good news, however, my lord. I have just had word from the hospital where the victim had been treated. Her condition is improving steadily, and the doctor believes she will regain consciousness soon. It's strange. We've been talking about the victim all this time, but we never once met her.
How wonderful! The woman is out of danger, it seems.
Yes, that is good news.
So, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Yes! On behalf of my fellow countrymen, I would like to take this opportunity to beg your pardon, sir. You came from your distant eastern homeland to study our great British culture, and have been repaid with immeasurable unkindness. Please accept our heartfelt apologies.
Oh.
No, it's me who should be begging your pardon.
Oh no, Mr. Natsume.
That evening, when the young woman just collapsed on the pavement before my eyes, I jumped to the wrong conclusion again in my confusion. What conclusion, sir? I was sure that the woman was dead.
Yes, Constable Beat said the same thing, didn't he? He thought she had been killed too.
I suppose she must have looked completely lifeless.
It's been about a year since I arrived in Great Britain now, but I still can't get used to life here. I can't relax. I'm sure there are evil spirits lurking in the fog, like they're haunting me.
Poor Soseki-san. His imagination really has got the better of him.
Yes, poor man.
So, when it happened, I thought the young woman had been taken by the fog spirits. I should never have dropped my books like that and run away. I should have called for help, for a doctor, for the police. Instead, I've managed to create a rift in the relationship of trust between our two empires. And for that, I am truly sorry.
You're far too honest, Soseki.
One could indeed say that some sort of mischievous spirit had been at work here, I think. One that created a chain of unfortunate mishaps. We were befooled by this spirit and led to false conclusions. But thanks to Lord Van Zeeks and our young lawyer here from the east, that chain has now been broken and the spirit exorcised. I heartily commend you both.
Oh.
Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes, my lord.
In concluding this trial, I must ask one last time for your decisions regarding the defendant's culpability. Are you ready to present your findings to the court?
As the foreman of this jury, I assure you we've reached a fair and just conclusion. I can.
I do declare the truth to be extremely cruel at times.
Well, I didn't suspect the woman next to me, that's for sure. Sitting in for the old bean while she's out of action, you know? But I know what her decision would be. Does this mean I'll finally be able to get out of here and start work? Well, it's about time.
I say, I'll have a corkover story to tell the grandchildren when I get home, won't I? Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby demand your final decisions. Mr. Foreman?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Woo! We did it! Boom!
Very well, Mr. Soseki Natsumi, I hereby pronounce you...
Not guilty! Confetti and fireworks! Woo! Oh my god, we finally finished this case. Huh, jeez.
And finally, Mr. Natsume. Oh, yes, my lord, sir. You are now a free man once more. It is my hope that you will continue to further your education in British culture. And may you never again be brought before me. Oh, yes, sir, of course. On my life, I swear I'll never set foot in a courtroom again.
I have bad news for you, Soseki. Transport it to Tears!
Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned.
Of course, my need to, like, press everything because I want to see all the dialogue, but also I want to finish cases. Meh. No, but this is good, because whenever I do the LP with KV and Lewis, I'm not going to have the opportunity to press on everything, so. 20th February, 3:17 p.m., the Old Bailey, Defendant's Antechamber. Oh, locum! Wait, you mean me? Of course! Is there any other locum here? Is there even one? Compared to the original locum student, Mr. Naro Esquire, your name has become rather short, hasn't it? What's wrong with using my actual name? My thoughts exactly. Oh! Oh, at last! I'm free! I'm free! Joyful, joyous, jubilant, jubilation! Heady, hearty, happiness, hurrah! Oh, I am pleased! Mitsu Natsumi is delighted. Would it be so hard just to say that, then? Locum! You did it! You saved me from the brink! Well, what happened to the poor woman was in no way your fault, after all. I'm just glad everyone can see that now. No, not that! Lovely, loyal, locum, lawyer! Yes? I mean, as I said before, I have just never got used to life here in Great Britain. Every time I look over my shoulder, I see foreigners. I see towering brick buildings. And from high up windows, I see them looking down at me, laughing. Look at that little hunchback. Oh dear. I'm sure it's all in your head, Mr. Natsume. But today, you, locum lawyer, gave my gloom the boot. You stood firm behind that baronial bench before all those babbling British. You battled to the bitter end, laying bare the baffling truth. And when I beheld the blinding fireworks among the beams of Bailey's roof, I bellowed, "Behold, the best barrister ever born!" Well, that's very flattering, and we're very pleased for you. This has given me a wonderful antidote to recount to my old friends back in Japan. An antidote? Is that what's to become of all my hard work? There you are, my dear fellows. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I rose late this morning. Oh, Mr. Sholmes, what a pleasure to see you. I see I'm here not a moment too soon. A disaster has been averted, I'm glad to say. Oh. The trial shall begin presently, Mr. Naruhodo, and I wish you the very best of luck. It just finished. What? No! Then my haste was in vain. Your haste? You had like 5 hours or something to get to here. It's you! Herlock Sholmes! Oh? Have we met before? Oh, this is Mr. Natsume, the man you had arrested, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, I see. I failed to recognize you at first. Our previous encounters have taken place in the gloom. either of your bleak lodgings or that prison cell. I simply couldn't place that curious face in the light. Charming.
This is all your fault, Hairlock Sholmes. You're the reason I had to go through that terrible ordeal. I'm going to give you a piece of my mind.
My apologies, sir, but I assure you, I have placed you now. You're the fellow who abandoned that poor young lady and ran off, are you not?
Ah!
Had she been taken to the hospital more urgently, I feel perhaps she would have regained consciousness by now.
Oh! You know what? He has a point.
But it was unavoidable, I'm sure. We are but human, after all. Anyone would have been shaken by such an experience. I do feel very badly about how I behaved. Well, never mind. Now then, what was it that you wanted to say to me, sir? Nothing. Priceless. Oh, I'm sorry, really, but that was quite priceless. Poor Soseki-san. Still, on the bright side, you've had an extremely entertaining experience without paying a penny. And it would seem you were not even found guilty. But there is no bright side. Whatever do you mean, Mr. Natsume? Even after this, I'm still cursed by the spirits and, by now, the Reaper. Ah, Lord Van Zeeks.
I haven't forgotten, you know, what facing that man in court means. Even if you're found not guilty, you're still doomed.
It will be all right, Mr. Natsume. If the Reaper appears trying to make trouble, I will protect you.
Here! And then she throws me again.
With a perfectly executed Susato takedown. Soseki, much as I like being turned on my head, a bit of warning might be nice next time, Miss Susato. So, Mr. Natsume, what do you intend to do now? You mentioned something about recounting your experiences to your friends back in Japan?
Yes, I intend to return to my homeland soon.
Oh.
It has already been a year since I arrived here in Great Britain. I visited universities, libraries, bookshops. I've been honored with the tutelage of professors. I've learned so much about the wealth of literature here and the city it has shaped. And I've come to realize that it is my calling to sail home and tell my fellow countrymen about it.
That's very touching, Mr. Natsume.
Or, in perhaps less veiled terms, you wish to withdraw halfway around the world, escape the terror of the Reaper's curse? That's not it at all! The more I learn of literature, the more this strange feeling claws at my insides. I feel compelled to return to my roots and attempt to pen a work of my own.
Oh, I see. A work of literature by Soseki-san. Could be an interesting read.
And what about Mr. Sato and yourself, Mr. Naruhodo?
Sorry, what about us?
Will you return to Japan alongside your mustached compatriot?
Why would we? A week has not yet passed since we arrived in London. And only now does it feel as though we have finally found our feet.
And you are accommodated in a hotel at present, are you not?
That's right, but we need to find lodgings before it bankrupts us. I've calculated we can only afford another 10 nights before our entire budget is exhausted.
So, well then, you could take my lodgings.
Oh, the windowless room?
Ah, but what it lacks in windows, it's more than makes up for with a floor, a ceiling, and walls.
Great.
And of course, I'd be happy to leave behind the accursed evil spirit.
Oh my, an evil spirit?
Oh yes. It tries to suffocate you while you sleep. It's an infallible wake-up call.
No, thank you. We'll think about it, if that's alright. Perhaps I can offer a more welcome alternative. Would you consider taking lodgings with me?
Really?
Well, a vacancy has conveniently presented itself. Though it's up in the attic, I might add. Are you sure it isn't just a storage loft? I spoke with the landlady this very morning on the matter of price, and Iris is cleaning the room as we speak. You must come at once. I presume you have no luggage to speak of.
Oh, this is simply wonderful. What an honor to be invited to take lodgings in the Great Detective's office's attic. I'm too overcome for words.
So suggesting we look elsewhere is out then.
Yeah, you've been invited by the detective. Of course you're gonna go.
Then it's settled. Iris will prepare a welcome dinner this evening. And you must come too, Mr. Natsumi. I insist.
Family! I don't know what to say, but thank you, and yes!
Wonderful. Then I'll go and complete the paperwork for your formal release, Mr. Natsume. It shan't take long.
Somebody's happy.
The Baker Street life is the Baker Street life is coming. Locum, I know that you wouldn't let me down. I'm truly delighted to have met you here in London.
Likewise, Mr. Natsume. It's been a privilege meeting you too. It's a shame that we're going to have to say goodbye so soon.
Not that soon. Well, I've come to realize that I belong in Japan. But Locum, we'll meet again one day.
Yes, I'm sure. And hopefully by then, I'll be a successful lawyer.
Hopefully by then, I'll be a successful author.
Well, my dear fellow, our carriage appears to have arrived. Shall we go, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, Mr. Sholmes. I've little doubt Mr. Natsume will be released in time for dinner this evening. And so, with Soseki-san's innocence successfully established, we rode with Mr. Sholmes to what was to become our new home, 221B, Baker Street. Here it is! The 20th of February, 4:41 p.m., the attic room. So this is to be our new office, yes. Our office? I rather like the sound of that.
Me too. It's simply wonderful, isn't it?
I hope you can see this, Kazuma. It's only a small step. Oh no, we said Kazuma. But I'd like to think we're getting a little closer to your dream now. So, my dear fellows, do you like the place? Mr. Sholmes, yes, thank you so much.
It's a delightful room, Mr. Sholmes. I simply adore it.
Good. I'm pleased to hear it. And Iris and I are delighted to welcome you.
I hope everyone's hungry. It's nearly time for dinner. We'll eat as soon as Mr. Natsume arrives. We have a lot to celebrate.
No, he's not.
Iris, you must let me help you. All right then, Susie. You can be in charge of the salad.
Splendid.
Oh, right, he did take off his coat, didn't he? Of course he's hot now.
So, Mr. Naruhodo, how does it feel to have your own office in the capital? It's very exciting, actually. I can't help wondering what adventures awaits us. Those were precisely my sentiments when I first established my office at these premises. Until I discovered the dark truth about the city of London, that is. Sorry? London is a glorious place, full of wonder, opportunity, prosperity, and mirth. But the brightest of lights cast the darkest of shadows. Shadows? What do you mean?
Oh no, he's evil.
Well, I believe you're well aware of the murkiness that lies behind London's facade already.
So, once again, Mr. Naruto. Welcome to London.
Of course, at the time, I had no idea of the significance of those words Mr. Sholmes so casually spoke. But it wasn't long before my turn came to lift the facade and see the true depth of the murk that lay behind it. We did it! We finished! End! Woo! Another case tackled and another acolyte obtained. Yes, we will save. And guess what? We're going to case 2 too. Not tonight, but you know. I'm gonna save first. Oh, the adventures of the unspeakable story, though. Ooh, hold on, I'm leaving. Going back into the menu. Okay. Alright, give me a moment. I think I only got one acolyte, right? It's just one acolyte. Which would be this one, probably. Okay. Stuff to talk about. When I go check my acolytes first. I'm not continuing. We're done for tonight when it comes to anything.